almost 70%. That's how much water our body contains. And yet, an increasing number of people are consciously choosing to refrain from eating or drinking for extended periods. It's a practice that could hardly be more radical, and it raises the question, what exactly happens in the body when it is pushed to such extremes?
It is indeed fascinating to observe how the human organism reacts to the complete absence of food and water. We are talking here about dry fasting, which fundamentally differs from the well-known water fast or intermittent fasting, where at least fluid intake is ensured. It is a profound physiological transformation that pushes the body to its limits. And it is precisely this experience at the edge that we must critically examine, because what appears fascinating at first glance actually represents an intense battle for survival within the body.
And that's exactly what makes me skeptical. If our body is so heavily reliant on water, how can it possibly survive without it, even for a short time? There must be extreme deficiencies, right? I immediately envision serious problems.
At the same time, however, the body activates intensive emergency mechanisms to conserve water. Hormones like vasopressin and aldosterone play a key role here by instructing the kidneys to retain as much water as possible. The body desperately tries to secure its fluid reserves. Even the production of small amounts of endogenous water from fat stores is an adaptive response. These processes underscore the astonishing ability for internal regulation under extreme stress.
That sounds like a battle for survival at the cellular level. When the body essentially shifts into energy-saving mode, what happens to our metabolism? I've heard that during fasting, fat reserves are mobilized. But what about without water?
Weight loss does occur, and there are isolated studies that have examined such extreme conditions under laboratory settings. For example, a frequently cited study by Papagianniopoulos and colleagues, titled Anthropometric Hemodynamic, Metabolic, and Renal Responses During 5 Days of Food and Water Deprivation, documented an average weight loss of up to 1.4 kilograms per day in 10 healthy adults who underwent a full 5 days of dry fasting. The study concluded that for this specific healthy group under closely monitored conditions, the intervention was classified as safe and even showed an improvement in certain kidney function parameters. However, it must be stated clearly, 5 days without any fluid intake is an extreme physiological challenge that far exceeds what is considered safe or survivable for the general public. Moreover, the weight loss was predominantly due to the loss of body water, even though fat burning naturally occurs as well. Processes such as autophagy, our cellular recycling, are intensified. But here's a crucial point to emphasize. Since dry fasting involves refraining from both food and water, most study designs cannot definitively exclude that the observed health benefits are primarily attributable to the absence of food. Many of the positive effects, such as weight loss, metabolic improvements, and reduction of inflammation, are also seen with water fasting or other fasting methods that only restrict food intake.
So that means the often cited positive effects of dry fasting could largely just be the effects of abstaining from food, which could be achieved even more safely with water fasting. Is there any evidence at all that the additional withdrawal of water brings specific benefits beyond that?
That is a very important question. There are indeed theories and some indications from various sources that suggest the water deprivation in dry fasting might produce additional or accelerated effects. One aspect is a possibly more drastic volume reduction, which could lead to the elimination of edematous fluids, essentially water retention. Some also argue that the hypertonic stress caused by the onset of dehydration, meaning the increased concentration of salts and other substances in body fluids, could stimulate autophagy more strongly or quickly than food withdrawal alone. There are even subjective reports from practitioners who describe dry fasting as water fasting on steroids, hinting at an intensified effect. Some even postulate the dying off of pathogenic bacteria due to the lack of water, or the production of particularly valuable endogenous water. However, these specific benefits, attributed solely to water deprivation, have not yet been robustly substantiated in scientific research and must be considered within the overall context.
That definitely puts the miracle cure discussion into perspective. Even if there are theoretical additional benefits from water withdrawal, they still remain in the shadow of the body's general emergency response.
Absolutely. Even if there were specific advantages to water deprivation, these processes are always part of an extreme stress response by the body. Studies show a significant increase in stress hormones like cortisol and inflammatory markers. The body is under high tension as it strives to secure survival. This is a state of compensation, not of thriving well-being. The notion that this could be an ultimate health reset button must therefore be critically questioned, as the long-term effects and the ratio of any potential specific benefits to the enormous risks remains unclear.
Emphasizing the emergency reactions of the body is crucial. It demonstrates that we are not dealing with a wellness trend here, but with an extreme physiological stress test. The feeling of having survived healthily could be a dangerous illusion. Where exactly is the absolute threshold at which this survival turns into a life-threatening situation?
Here we need to be unequivocally clear. Extended dry fasting, as it is sometimes promoted, is not a healthy state, but a serious, potentially life-threatening practice. The primary and greatest danger is severe dehydration, which inevitably leads to critical electrolyte imbalances. These can trigger seizures, cardiac arrhythmias, and even fatal brain edema. Acute kidney failure is another immediate threat, as the kidneys cannot function without adequate fluids. Although isolated studies under extreme conditions in healthy volunteers have demonstrated other effects, in laboratory situations, the strain on the kidneys is immense. The medical consensus is clear. For individuals with any pre-existing conditions, whether it be type 1 or type 2 diabetes, kidney or heart diseases, as well as for pregnant or breastfeeding women, children, and the elderly, dry fasting is absolutely contraindicated. Even for healthy individuals, there is no reliable scientific evidence to support the safety of longer periods of dry fasting in everyday life. The available studies, such as the one mentioned earlier, primarily document the extreme compensatory mechanisms of the body under laboratory conditions that render the state survivable at all, but they do not establish general health or safety for everyone.
So we see clearly, the notion of healthy survival through dry fasting is a dangerous myth. The body does perform extraordinary feats to protect itself, but that does not equate to a state of vitality. The risks far outweigh any supposed potential, and this form of fasting is definitely not something one should consider without an in-depth understanding of the physiological processes and proper medical supervision, if at all.
Exactly. When it comes to promoting health and longevity through fasting, we are talking about evidence-based methods such as intermittent fasting or water fasting, which allow for controlled fluid intake. These methods have scientifically proven benefits, predominantly attributable to the absence of food, and when conducted correctly, are far safer for healthy individuals. Whether the additional water withdrawal in dry fasting can ever offer a justifiable extra benefit in light of the immense risks is highly questionable and not scientifically substantiated. Dry fasting should not be marketed as a game changer for general health given the serious, life-threatening risks. We strongly advise against attempting this extreme practice without comprehensive medical evaluation and supervision. Your doctor can recommend safe and personalized fasting strategies that truly promote your well-being without endangering you. Stay critical and make sure to inform yourself thoroughly.
We would like to sincerely thank you for spending this episode with us. Your support and interest mean a great deal. We hope you have gained fascinating insights and valuable food for thought. As always, we wish everyone a long, healthy, and happy life. Until next time.